Yo, welcome back to the China House fam. It's your boy Jay back with a brand new video for y'all today. And in today's video, we're going to be ranking all of Luffy's gears from One Piece. But first, let's drop that intro. Technically, we never got a Gear 1, but when we were introduced to Gear 2, Luffy to me was at his limit of what he could do. He had far outstretched the uses of the Gumu Gumu no pistol, bazooka, Gatling, or the other 100 variations that he had cooked up until this point. In this base form, when thinking about how OP Luffy is, now it's a given that this form doesn't really hold a candle to any of the gears, but we can't deny the fact that Luffy beat some of the series' most notorious bad guys up until Water 7. Albeit with some help. Luffy without even Haki beat Don Krieg, Alvida, the Cat Butler Curl, but more importantly, just with his imagination alone, Luffy was able to maximize his Devil Fruit's power to great moves that Plastic Man or Reed Richards would be amazed at. From training to be a pirate as a kid, Garp's harsh and unorthodox training methods to make him grow stronger, such as leaving him alone in the wilderness as a young child, tying him to balloons so he would float away, or throwing him into a bottomless pit, as well as several years of further rigorous training in the extremely harsh environments of Mount Columbo and the island of Rusukaina. By the time Luffy was ready to set sail and begin his journey of becoming the Pirate King, he needed to get that lick back on the Sea King who years earlier ate a whole man's arm biting off Shanks. In one single punch, Luffy was able to take out the Sea King, which only the strongest of ships or captains could take on a Sea King. One person facing off against a Sea King is pretty much a suicide trip. From the jump, we see how special and strong Luffy is. I mean, this man defeated the pirate in the East Blue with the highest bounty of 20 million berries, and Arlong, a former member of the Sun Pirates that included the likes of Jinbei and the legendary Fisher Tiger. Although he did take early L's to Smoker, y'all remember that Joker, or even Buggy, Luffy's strength would always seem to be multiplying as he would go on to defeat the Warlord Crocodile, and then he went on to defeat a very god in the Nell. Luffy has always been leveling up from the time he embarked on his journey leading up to Water 7/Enies Lobby, one of the top arcs in One Piece, introducing us to Luffy's gears, which we are going to be ranking today. So let's break this joint down. Coming in at number 4 is Gear 3rd, aka the Gear of Giants, which was first seen in Enies Lobby. Luffy can inflate parts of his body to ginormous sizes, giving him the appearance of a giant. By blowing massive amounts of air into his thumb after biting it, the air inflates the bone and the parts that he wants to enlarge. The coolest thing is that the already OP Luffy, who is already strong as hell, can create massive amount of damage, said to be on the scale of giants, if not more, easily destroying big ass buildings and super thick steel doors. My favorite thing about Gear 3 is the science behind how it works. As you know, Luffy inflates his bone through an opening in his thumb. He can essentially get to any part of his body by using his torso as a control panel to direct the air to any part. High key, his extremities can grow to sizes larger than a giant, more reminiscent of Orange from Thriller Bark. Let's keep it a stack. This gear is generally used whenever Luffy needs that nice pump in strength to take on the series' toughest opponents like Kaido, Doffy, and even Rob Lucci, but it's definitely Luffy's least creative gear, and that's why it ranks last in all of the gears, because not only is it not creative, I mean, think about it, a rubber man's power-up is the ability to enlarge his body parts, when in his base form we saw him being so creative, like with the Gumu Gumu no Fushin, aka Luffy's balloon form, where he would early on use it to enlarge his body, but in a less superior form since it was more squishier and didn't function as the same. Things like bullets and cannonballs don't ricochet off it like it does with the dense form of Gear 3rd. The main reason why I think initially Gear 3rd wasn't creative was because all the moves essentially are just larger forms of a lot of his main moves, bruh. Gumu Gumu no Gigant Pistol, oh wow, a bigger arm, and putting Gigant in the name. It doesn't really change the move, but I'll give Luffy credit because the first time he used this move, it did this to Rob Lucci. When it comes to raw strength, Gear 3rd always understood the assignment and did what it needed to do. But the main drawback of this gear was two things. One, this gear allows Luffy to grow to gigantic sizes, but makes Luffy an easier and slower target when fighting against faster opponents like Lucci, who was kind of able to put the pause on Luffy in this form, leading Luffy to use it in a more situational scenario, like catching him in the air or when they were in a slow moving sequence. Initially, its cooldown effect shrunk Luffy to a chibi-sized version of himself whenever this gear wore out or he released the form, leaving him in a vastly underpowered state. That caused him to essentially play hide and seek until he reverted back to his normal self. Another reason why I think Gear 3rd ranks so low is that it was introduced right after the very memorable Gear 2nd. I don't think it had enough time to get its shine and love, and would have probably been better off if we just got it in Thriller Bark, which would have made more sense with the inclusion of Oars and Nightmare Luffy. So when I first saw this form in the manga, deadass, I thought it was just another power-up of Gear 2nd. So it really never hit like it could have early on for me. But I will give credit where credit is due. During the time skip, Luffy was able to master both Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd to the point where in Gear 3rd, he didn't have that chibi cooldown, learning to make the air store at specific parts of his body, allowing him to be faster and stronger, with his moves now being named after the animals Arusukaina. And don't even get me started with him using Gear 3rd in combo with Armament and Advanced Conqueror's Haki. Bruh, some of the toughest moves in the series come from this mastered form. Like, look at what the Gumu Gumu no Rock Gun does to the strongest beast in the world, Kaido. He was able to damage Kaido and make him bleed, a feat that's something the almighty Gear 4th struggled to do. Although, to do this, Luffy had to master both Gear 2nd, doing so without the drawbacks of these forms he had in the pre-time skip. Gear 3rd is cool. I really love the science behind it because Luffy actually seems to be using his brain, but it's my least favorite because it is the least creative and the least memorable to me, and high-key Oda stole Gear 3rd from Tom and Jerry. I can probably speak for most of my One Piece fans when I say this. One of the biggest reasons Enies Lobby / Water 7 is regarded as one of the best arcs in the story wasn't just the great pacing, tightly interwoven storylines, and the fights, but the character progression. We got so much in this shorter arc compared to the other multiple year-long arcs and sagas. The reveal of Luffy's Gear 2nd remains not only one of his top 5 moments, but top moments in One Piece period. I remember the reveal of Gear 2nd, boy, was this straight heat. First introduced during Enies Lobby during the fight with Bluno, a CP9/0 agent and an expert in Ryokushiki. When Luffy did that iconic stance with his skin turning a shade of pink and steam emanating off his body, I know we were in for some shit because, to be fair, up until this point, besides the use of double fruits, we didn't get a power up beyond the base level until post time skip with awakened forms. Luffy was able to peep the use of Soru, one of the 6 techniques of Ryokushiki that allow the user to move at high speeds, creating a major advantage for his opponents. He was able to pull a Sharingan out of his ass and copy this technique by speeding up his blood flow. Since Luffy is a rubber man, his body can handle the immense pressure that this gear places on his body, allowing for more oxygen and nutrients to be pumped throughout his body, vastly increasing Luffy's physical capabilities. When the agents of CP9 were introduced, they were the fastest characters at the time, a subtle change in pace to the powerhouse enemies we were getting prior. Just by observing CP9 using Soru, Luffy was easily able to surpass the speed of Rob Lucci and Bluno, as well as gaining enough oomph to bust through the impenetrable defense of Tekai. That was an armament before armament Haki. Luffy initially activated this gear by pumping through his legs to increase the blood flow in all of his body parts. And similar to Gear 3rd, all of his new moves are essentially just the same but much faster and stronger, with the addition of Jet being added to the name. Let's take the Gumu Gumu no Gatling. In its base form, it was already a fairly speedy attack, as Luffy throws a whole barrage of punches, creating the illusion that he has multiple arms. Even with the speed the base form carries, we have seen characters such as Enel, Usopp, and Lucci dodge it. When using Gumu Gumu no Jet Gatling, it was arguably Luffy's strongest Gear 2nd move at the time. If the base form created illusions that Luffy had multiple arms, then this form makes them vanish, only leaving jet streams in their place. Gear 2nd allows Luffy Luffy's speed to be so optimized and fast that this very move was able to catch a hybrid Zoan form Lucci lacking. Even as amazing as Gear 2nd is, it does come with some drawbacks. Initially, just like with Gear 3rd, the ramp up and increased flow of his blood results in more oxygen and energy consumption, thus increases his metabolic rate to the point that steam we see coming off his body is actually sweat evaporating. This form takes a major toll on his stamina, nutrient consumption, and energy, causing Luffy to be left in an almost paralyzed state, being barely able to move as we seen at the end of the Lucci fight. Due to this doping method, Lucci also stated that this fast burn of energy and nutrients was eating at Luffy's life force, to which Luffy disregarded as an equivalent exchange to save his friends. Like, this gear was the shit. My favorite part is the use of Gear 2nd in the post-time skip. Luffy had mastered it and was able to use it in short bursts at specific parts of his body, something that was hinted at when he ran through and impelled down on his lonely, mopping fodder and even hitting Blackbeard with this iconic Gumu Gumu jet pistol. Something Luffy used to show his mastery of Gear 2nd after coming back from the time skip was taking down a pacifista with a single jet pistol. And we all know how the Straw Hats got washed on Sabaody, but no better example of the greatness of Gear 2nd is how Luffy was able to combine Gear 2nd and 3rd with Haki. Gear 2nd hands down has one of my favorite moves in Luffy's arsenal. This man trained so hard to never lose anyone close to him like Ace that he created the Gumu Gumu no Red Hot, a punch so fast, so strong and hot that Luffy's arm literally ignites and turns into an ode to Ace's Fire Fist gun, which the anime did justice when this scene aired. This gear is one of my favorites due to it being memorable and creative, and honestly the best part, it showcased Luffy's ability to adapt and be creative with his toolset. In contrast to Gear 3rd, also it is a clear nod to Kaioken from Dragon Ball Z, so it will always hold a special place for your boy. In second place is Gear 4th, and honestly my favorite gear to date just because I love how versatile it was and possibly his most creative and versatile gear until the introduction of the godly Gear 5th. Created during his time on Rusukaina, we first got to see this amazing gear during the Fire Doflamingo fight. Luffy activates his gear by blowing into his arm, but the biggest difference between this gear and Gear 3rd is that Luffy inflates all of his muscles and coats the majority of his body with armament Haki. What I love about Gear 4th is how creative Luffy gets by finding new ways to improve on his last two gears, as Gear 4th has 3 different forms. Say what you want to say about Luffy's smarts, but when it comes to his battle aptitude and how he gets into his bag and utilizing his Devil Fruit, it's probably the best in the series. In the first form, Bowman, Luffy essentially turns himself into a human rubber ball, being able to bounce at all times. In this form, he can also retract his extremities inside of his body to not only release OD powerful attacks, but to also fly. This form greatly increases Luffy's speed, his offense and defensive capabilities, since practically his whole body except for his head and torso are covered in armament. My favorite thing about Gear 4th is the appearance. This shit is heat. Not only does Luffy get taller, but this little nigga also gets hella stocky. His body reminds me of Garp. Luffy's also continually emitting steam. My favorite detail about the appearance in this form though is the look of the Haki that coats Luffy's body, turning black from hardening, but also has a red tint to it that's just the perfect touch. The ends of the Haki coating across his body resemble the wispy ends made from flames, giving it the appearance of tattoos, and he gains shading around the inner and outer edges of his eyes. Bowman takes a lot of inspiration from Gear 2nd, where both are heavily inspired by Ryokushiki, possessing both high speed movements reminiscent of Sorrow and the ability to kick off the air similar to Geppo. Luffy not only bounces off the air, but his hardened body makes attacks bounce off him with ease. His body is now strong enough to defend against cutting attacks head on. The next form is Tankman, my least favorite form cause we only get to see an altered version of it, and high key, it's type cheeks. First appearing during the Cracker fight, Luffy had to use this form after eating all of Cracker's biscuits. Pause. This man ate so much that he was looking like Usopp during the time skip. Tankman is a more defensive form and is used whenever Luffy needed a boost in durability, requiring it to take on a Sweet Commander's piercing attack that deeply wounded him in Bowman form. The funny thing is though, we've actually never seen the true base form of Tank Man since Luffy was already a big ass ball. But as far as forms go, personally, my fave has to be Snake Man. Getting introduced during one of my favorite fights, the Katakuri fight. I love this form for the same reason why I chose Gear 2nd over Gear 3rd. Luffy specifically came up with this gear to combat people who are faster, quicker, and in this case, Katakuri's future sight. And honestly, Katakuri was moving and dodging most of Luffy's attacks. In Snake Man, Luffy becomes more proportionally buff and the haki only expands to his upper arms and legs. Luffy's hair becomes flame shaped like the haki. Instead of steam, this form produces a gaseous substance appearing as a mix of steam and fire. His fists also flex differently, with the fist knuckles being extended like leopard's fist. This form is fast as hell, and like Bowman, it can use Python, allowing Luffy to change the direction of his attack. But the difference is that when in Snake Man, his attacks are continuously accelerating the longer they last, allowing Luffy to really press his opponents and be on that ass as we saw with Katakuri. Snake Man is really used to get those quick and fast hits in, so it lacks the defensive capability that Bowman and Tank Man have. Gear 4th boasts some of my favorite moves from Luffy, like the Kong gun, and I love how it looks like artillery strikes whenever he fires off these attacks. Gear 4th was literally perfect.
Gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect.
It has a drawback of a 10-minute cooldown, leaving Luffy again in an unmovable state. To me, placing Gear 4th in 2nd spot makes sense, since Luffy gained an increase in speed and the power that allowed him to beat arguably the 2nd strongest warlord at the time in Doflamingo, and a Yonko commander in Katakuri, whereas before, Gear 2nd lacked a lot of strength and Gear 3rd lacked the speed, which made them ineffective in some of their fights. Alright, now in creating this, I thought very hard and long, pause, about my decision in ranking the gears. But coming in first place is Gear 5th. Now, before y'all flame me down in the comments, this ranking is not based off just strength, but also creativity in use and how it amplifies Luffy's powers. Now, with that being said, I think we can all agree that Gear 5th is Luffy's best gear, even with the limited amount that we have seen. Only seeing this gear in Wano, Film Red, and Egghead. I know when this gear was released, the One Piece community was kind of split on whether they liked the cartoonish version of Luffy and his newly awakened powers, but for me, it was a hit. I think this perfectly falls in line with Luffy's personality and desire to be in a position that marks ultimate freedom. He does not want to be the most powerful pirate or to be seen as the government's most dangerous enemy. Instead, he wants to explore, see unfamiliar places, meet people, sail to the unknown, eat new foods, and make friends. He wants to be in a position where he can do whatever he wants and go wherever he wants to see what he wants. Gear 5th fully embodies this. Revealed during the climax of the raid on Onigashima, Oda pulled off the greatest dupe in all of anime/manga history, revealing that the Gumu Gumu no Mi was actually the Hida Hida no Mi model Nika. Luffy awakens his devil fruit after going down to Kaido, slowly transforming into the sun god, with his heartbeat bumping to the beat of the drums of liberation. The power of his fruit has been described as the most ridiculous power in the world by the Gorosei. It grants Luffy's rubber-like body increased strength and freedom, allowing him to fight in any way he pleases. It is for this reason that the users of this fruit are said to become the warrior of liberation, bringing joy and freedom to those around him. Now, if that don't sound like Luffy, I don't know what is. In comparison to his other gears, they always felt more serious, with intensity increasing from Gear 2nd to Gear 4th. The appearance always contrasted with the goofiness of Luffy. Gear 5th is the peak form of Luffy, which he even said when he first awakened the form. He could feel it, and so could we as the viewers. What makes the reveal of Gear 5th so iconic is that Oda foreshadowed the Nika silhouette during Skypiea, and said Luffy's silhouette dancing at the War Liberation Party at the end of this arc was his favorite scene in One Piece. Both the silhouettes were very identical. Luffy being Nika makes sense, as Nika was a mythical warrior that was revered as a sun god by slaves in ancient times, liberating them, something that Luffy has been doing with oppressed citizens, slaves, and even some of his crewmates the whole series. And by the series end, it will be Luffy's best gear. Hands down, Gear 5th has the best appearance. Luffy's hair and clothes, except for his straw hat, belt, and sandals, turn white, which represent his status as the sun god. And white is usually associated with holiness or immaculateness. His eyes glow with a red ring like pupils, and white clouds float around his neck, similar to the clouds of steam that accompany him in Snake Man. The greatest thing about Gear 5th is the power. Not only is Luffy able to utilize both the limb inflation from Gear 3rd and the muscle inflation from Gear 4th, allowing him to greatly increase his own strength. Bruh, Luffy was able to grow to such a size that he made Kaido's beast form seem minuscule. He was able to easily manhandle Kaido, swinging him from side to side and playing jump rope with him on some Tom and Jerry shit. Since this is an awakened form, Luffy can extend his rubbery nature to his surroundings. And one of my favorite scenes in the final Kaido fight, Luffy was able to reflect a bolo breath by stretching a part of the roof, extending the rubber properties to it. That bolo breath went boing, and we saw the power of the bolo breath. And Luffy took this joint head on, even Conqueror's Haki infused attacks from Kaido's combo that decimated Gear 4th Boundman, Luffy in one hit, and Gear 5th, Luffy's head stretched around the combo, not taking a lick of damage. Luffy's powers at this point almost seem like something straight out of a picture book. Now, at first, I want to rank Gear 4th over Gear 5th just because to me, it's Luffy's #1 gear. But then, after seeing this animated and rereading the manga, I'd be nuts to place it over Gear 5th. Sure, have we seen Gear 4th be mastered and offer extreme versatility? Yes, but at the same time, the main selling point is one, Gear 4th Luffy was knocked out by one Thunder Bagawa and Sun was KO'd. Luffy in Gear 5th was able to go toe to toe with a Yonko, eventually defeating Kaido and making easy work of the overhyped up Rob Lucci's Awakened Zone form. And I'm sure we're gonna see more of it in the rest of the Egghead arc and beyond. Say what you want about Gear 5th. It is Luffy's peak and we will have a whole lot more to learn about it going forward in the story. I'm sure it is going to turn a whole lot of y'all into believers. Thank you, House Fan, for stopping by the channel. We here at the House of Animation are dedicated to bringing you guys the best content we can. And we put a whole lot of hard work into these videos. So it would mean a lot if you can mash the like and subscribe button and make sure to turn the noties and alerts on to make sure you don't miss out on our videos. Also, make sure to drop a comment down below and let us know if you agree with this breakdown and what else you would like us to explore on this channel. And well, with that, House Fam, you already know what it is, baby. Gotta blast.